Regulatory policies are those in which government controls, or at least attempts to control, the behavior of the primary target group. In general, regulatory policies are the type that most of us encounter on a routine basis. Criminal laws and traffic codes are regulatory policies. A mandatory seatbelt law and a speed limit both impose controls on the behavior of motorists when they drive. City health codes impose controls on the way restaurant operators prepare and serve food to their customers. Federal clean air standards impose controls on how automobile manufacturers make cars. In the basic formula for regulatory policy, government sets some standard for behavior, inspects for compliance with the standard, and when it finds non-compliance, imposes a punishment. It is the punitive feature of regulatory policy that is most characteristic of regulation. Punishment is imposed in an effort to deter or limit the undesirable behavior. In many examples of regulatory policy, this punitive feature provokes great hostility from the primary target group. Target populations commonly see government regulations as an interference with their personal affairs. Many motorcyclists, for example, perceive mandatory helmet laws as none of government's business. Often business owners, particularly those in the small business community, see regulations imposed by the Occupational Safety and Health Administration as government trying to tell me how to run my business. Indeed, there is an aspect of regulatory policy that is paternalistic. These adverse reactions to government regulations are somewhat analogous to adolescents' reactions to rules imposed by their parents. In recent years, governments have tried a different approach to regulation. Rather than impose punishments on target groups as a means of deterring undesirable behavior, policies have been devised to provide incentives or rewards to achieve the desired results. Tax breaks for companies that use environmentally friendly manufacturing processes are a case in point. Many analysts prefer the carrot approach, the use of incentives, to the stick approach, the use of punitive measures, because they contend if regulated target groups associate their desired behaviors with their own self-interest, the regulation has a better chance of attaining results. In symbolic policy, policy action undertaken by government consists of symbols rather than substance. Previously, we have been quite emphatic that public policy has two components: policy statements and implementing actions. Now we can say that there are instances in which the policy statement is also the policy action. The policy is implemented with the enactment of the policy statement. In these cases, words are action. If, for example, the local city council adopts a resolution memorializing firefighters who have died in the line of duty, the adoption of the words in the resolution is what is being implemented. It acknowledges that these people were heroes and made the ultimate sacrifice. The action that government has undertaken here is not substantive. It has not provided to firefighters or anyone else any tangible resources, nor has government extracted any resources from anyone or controlled anyone's behavior. In 1980, President Jimmy Carter decided that American athletes would not be allowed to participate in the Olympic Games being held that summer in Moscow. The president's decision was a response to the Soviet Union's invasion of Afghanistan. Was the policy to prohibit American participation symbolic or substantive? Clearly, the policy restricted the behavior of the athletes, so we might conclude that it should be classified as regulatory. At the same time, however, if we assume that the primary target of the policy was the Soviet leadership, the world community, or even the general public in the United States, the policy action is highly symbolic. The policy seemed to be sending the message that the United States, as the leader of the free world, could not condone, even tacitly, the moral outrage the Soviet Union had committed. The policy of the United States was to articulate a moral principle: state sovereignty and national self-determination. Of the 5 classes of policy in this scheme, symbolic policy is perhaps the most difficult to come to grips with, at least initially. Few policies are entirely symbolic. and virtually all policies are some combination of symbol and substance. Even highly substantive policies have some measure of symbolism. Many resource allocative policies, such as Social Security and food stamps, have a moral underpinning. Regulatory policies, such as criminal laws prohibiting murder or prostitution, for example, often are based on concepts of right and wrong. None of this is to say that symbolic policy is bad. Symbols are important to all of us. However, the challenge for students of public policy, and thoughtful citizens generally, is to be able to determine whether the policy action of government with respect to the primary target group is preponderantly symbolic or substantive. Policymakers certainly appear to understand the difference and appear inclined to substitute symbols for substance whenever possible.